So today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating. Taiwan's plan to build a digital fortress around its entire financial system. And they're doing it by looking at what we've learned from recent conflicts, figuring out what it really takes to survive a massive, all-out cyber attack.
You know, you really have to forget everything you think you know about traditional battlefields, because these days, the first shot fired isn't a bullet, it's a line of code. The goal isn't just to hit military targets anymore, it's to paralyze a country's economy, to create absolute chaos by going straight for its financial heart.
And if you want to see just how real this new reality is, all you have to do is look at the war in Ukraine. That conflict has basically become a live stress test, and it's teaching the world some incredibly important lessons about digital resilience and this new kind of hybrid warfare.
So you have to wonder, how on earth did Ukraine's financial system stay standing through all of that? Well, it definitely wasn't luck. It was a very deliberate strategy. They moved massive amounts of data to offshore cloud servers like AWS and Azure almost overnight. They ran relentless daily drills, constantly switching between systems. They had this incredible network of international support from cybersecurity agencies. And, maybe most importantly, they had a plan for when the internet went dark.
And that brings us to the big question, really the core of this whole explainer. When you see what Ukraine went through and how they survived, it really forces you to take a hard look at Taiwan's own defenses. Is its financial system truly ready for a state-level cyber attack on that kind of scale?
Well, when you do an honest assessment, it turns out there are 5 major areas of concern. And we're not talking about small cracks in the armor here. These are significant vulnerabilities that could absolutely be exploited in a big, coordinated attack.
The first one, and you could argue it's the most critical, is all about where the data lives. See, in a crisis, if your only backups are on home soil, they're just as vulnerable as your main systems. The problem is this weird kind of catch-22. You have these really strict regulations that are designed to protect sensitive financial data, but those same rules actually stop institutions from using offshore cloud services for backup. And the result? Most banks only have backups within Taiwan, which creates this one giant single point of failure if the island's infrastructure gets hit.
Okay, the second weakness is all about information. In a cyber war, speed is everything. And that means you have to be getting real-time threat intelligence from your allies around the world, instantly.
Right now, any cooperation with key international cybersecurity groups is pretty informal. There's no official fast track, no dedicated hotline. And what that means is, when a major attack does hit, there's no streamlined process to get urgent, actionable intelligence. And that just slows the entire defense effort way down.
Now, this third vulnerability is something that affects literally everyone, the software supply chain. Because in cybersecurity, your defenses are only as strong as your weakest link, and that link is often a third-party vendor.
I want you to think of an SPON. That's a software bill of materials, like an ingredient list for your food. Without it, you have no idea what's actually inside. The same goes for code. Without a mandatory SPON, you have no idea what vulnerable components might be hiding inside the software you're using from other companies. It creates this massive blind spot for the entire financial system.
The fourth vulnerability gets into the systems we all rely on every single day. We're talking about the ATMs, the payment networks, the literal backbone of our financial world. And this is where you see a huge disconnect. The current emergency drills for things like ATMs or the SWIFT international payment system, well, they're designed for things like earthquakes or maybe some hardware failing. They are not built to simulate a massive state-sponsored cyber attack that takes out all communications. It's a whole different ballgame.
And, you know, that leads us right to the final weak point. What actually happens when that worst-case scenario becomes reality? As it stands, the plans for how to operate during wartime just aren't standardized across the board. So what exactly is a degraded mode? Well, it's the plan for how you keep things running when the digital world just goes dark. How do you process payments? How do people get cash out? The scary thing is, most financial institutions don't have formal tested plans for these offline situations, and that's a massive risk.
Okay, so we've diagnosed all these vulnerabilities. Now what's the solution? Well, it's not just one single fix. It's a really comprehensive 6-pillar strategy that's designed to build a multi-layered cyber shield.
So let's take a look at the blueprint. The plan is smart because it directly tackles every single vulnerability we just talked about. It starts by creating a solid framework for cross-border backups.
Then, it pulls all the intelligence into one national center and makes international cooperation official. After that, it's all about hardening that critical infrastructure, standardizing the wartime plans, and finally, securing the entire supply chain. Now, the way they're tackling that first vulnerability, the backups, is really clever. Instead of just throwing out the rules, the plan creates a whitelist of trusted G7 countries where data can be stored. It also creates a regulatory sandbox so they can test everything out safely. And here's the brilliant part. It mandates a keys in Taiwan model. What that means is, sure, the data can be stored abroad, but only if it's encrypted and the keys to actually unlock it stay safe at home.
And this isn't just talk. We're looking at real, concrete technical upgrades. For ATMs, that means reinforcing them with dedicated hardware security modules, or HSMs. For the SWIFT payment system, it means mandatory multi-factor authentication. And for the core real-time gross settlement system, RTGs, it means using AI to spot weird activity and running mandatory switchover drills every single year.
Okay, so you've got this great plan on paper. But a plan is only as good as its execution, right? So how do you actually turn this ambitious strategy from a document into a working reality? Well, the plan lays out a very clear roadmap.
And the roadmap is really logical. It's all about doing things in the right order. See, first you have to fix the legal framework so you can even do secure backups. Then you build that central intelligence hub. Once that's in place, you reinforce the physical infrastructure, you secure the supply chain, and then finally you standardize all those emergency plans. Every step just builds right on top of the last one.
So after all this technical detail, let's step back. What's the ultimate goal here? Why is building this cyber shield so incredibly important?
You know, this quote from the source material just absolutely nails it. A nation's financial system isn't some zippy speedboat. It's a massive oil tanker. It's incredibly powerful, but it's slow to turn. So this plan isn't about patching a few small leaks. It's about building an advanced, modern emergency system so that you can navigate through the most treacherous waters and make sure that no matter how bad the storm gets, that ship does not sink.
And that really leaves us with one last big thought. As the battlefields keep shifting from the physical world to the digital one, the ability to withstand a massive cyber attack and just keep society functioning, well, that might just be the most important form of national defense there is.